All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. So, I am Andrew, aka Perverted Mindgasms, for the purposes of this video, and I'm of course going to do my next video in my series on the post-structuralist philosopher Michel Foucault's book called History of Sexuality. And in this one, he in this paragraph that I'm going to go through, he talks about how science, during the Enlightenment, the institution of science declared what they defined as perversion to be a hereditary disease that meant that going back into the history of your ancestors, you were you had people who had specific diseases that led to perversion, and this will lead to you being a pervert will lead to your kids being perverted as well. And this was a process that Foucault talks about called degenerescence, which is the history of becoming degenerate. So I'll get into this paragraph here and comment on and mention a few things. Okay. Oh, and I have a few weird terms that he uses and words that I've never heard before that I'll show you here that I've looked up. Okay, so innovations that merge. So he's talking about innovations. This is right after a paragraph in which he's talking about innovations in the technology of sex in the second half of the 19th century. So the second half of the late 1800s. Okay, so these innovations in the technology of sex is what he means. So innovations that merge together quite well for the theory of degenerescence made it possible for them to perpetually refer back to one another. So remember, I said degenerescence is basically the process of becoming degenerate. So it basically means that if you exhibit homosexual behavior or perverted behavior of any kind, then this means that you are a pervert, and you will become degenerate in the same way as a homosexual person. So even by gay behavior, they mean like anal sex, even included in homosexual behavior. So even a straight couple having anal sex is uh, basically is part of degenerescence. And I'm going to, well, I was going to show you the screen share in the Webster's dictionary here, but that's what it literally says, the process of becoming degenerate. So it uses some other words and terms here that I'll define as I go as well. All right, so the theory of degenerescence made it possible for them to perpetually refer back to one another. It explained how a heredity that was burdened with various maladies, it made little difference whether these were organic, functional, or physical, ended by producing a sexual pervert. So various maladies through the process of generescence uh, lead to someone becoming a pervert through heterosexual or through homosexual rather, or homosexual or perverted behavior. Okay, so functional. So particular maladies lead to you becoming a pervert. It made little difference whether these were organic, functional, or physical, ended by producing a sexual pervert. Look into the genealogy of an exhibitionist or a homosexual. You will find a hemiplegic ancestor, a fistic parent, or an uncle afflicted with senile dementia. Most people know what senile dementia means, I assume. But I looked up hemiplegic and fistic here because they are terms that I had not heard before. So, oh, I forgot to open that up in my bookmarks. So I will stop sharing that, and I will share this. I'll show you the definition here. This is the definition of hemiplegic. So hemiplegia is a symptom that involves one-sided paralysis. Hemiplegia affects either the right or left side of your body. It happens because of brain or spinal cord injuries and conditions. Depending on the cause, hemiplegia can be temporary or permanent. So basically, a disease a disease that paralyzes the left side of your body. That is one thing that can lead to you becoming perverted. Or if any people in your family have hemiplegia or paralysis on only the left side of their body, then that can lead you to be perverted. This was literally confirmed objectively to be objectively true by the institution of science during the Enlightenment. And oh yeah, so fistic, I'll show you the definition of that there too, because I hadn't heard of this so-called malady before either. So fistic is countable and uncountable plural for physics pathology. So cystic is a wasting illness of the lungs, such as asthma or tuberculosis, consumption, phthisis, any wasting disease, a person suffering from phthisis. So a wasting disease of the lungs like asthma or tuberculosis. So literally, according to the institution of science during the later half of the 1800s, it was objectively true that if you have hyperplasia or a paralysis of the left side of your body, or you have wasting disease of the lungs in the form of asthma or tuberculosis, then, and anyone in your family was like that, then this means that you will become a pervert, because you have had people who have had left side paralysis or asthma or tuberculosis in your family. You're destined to become a pervert, according to science. So obviously that's pretty fucked up. Or an uncle afflicted with senile dementia. Like, how many people have senile dementia? And science just draw this false connection between senile dementia and perversion. All right, let me get a sip of coffee here. Okay. A cystic parent or an uncle afflicted with senile dementia. But it went on to explain how a sexual perversion resulted in the depletion of one's lines of descent. So it fucks up your genes if you're a pervert, basically. And it can lead to these other diseases, rickets in the children, the sterility of future generations. So if you're a pervert, it'll fuck up your future generations of children and their ancestors. It'll give your children rickets, and it'll cause your children and other ancestors to be sterile if you're a pervert. The series composed of perversion, heredity, degenerescence. And I looked that up, and that just means exactly what it sounds like. Perversion, heredity, degenerescence, just connecting these things too. So, like I said, degenerescence is the process of becoming degenerate. You get degenerate through perverted behavior, and your perverted behavior is hereditary. So, if you're a pervert, then that means that your parents were perverts, and your children will be perverts. And in this endless process of degenerescence, where you and your parents and your children and grandchildren, all of your future ancestors will be degenerate, will, through the process of degenerescence, become perverts as well. So the series composed of perversion, heredity, degenerescence formed the solid nucleus of the new technologies of sex. And let it not be imagined that this was nothing more than a medical theory, which was scientifically lacking and improperly moralistic. Its application was widespread, and its implantation went deep. Psychiatry, to be sure. Also, this is where he gets into all the other institutions other than the institution of science in general. So its application was widespread, and its implantation went deep. Psychiatry, to be sure, but also jurisprudence, legal medicine, agencies of social control, the surveillance of dangerous or endangered children, all function for a long time on the basis of degenerescence in the hereditary perversion system. So the institutions of science, the institution of science declared that that perversion is a hereditary disease, and through the and connects it to degenerescence and all that kind of stuff. And then the other the institution of psychiatry, so basically put forth this propaganda of perversion being being associated with giving you diseases and your ancestors having diseases and you giving your children diseases through the institution of this. So propaganda was spread through psychiatry, law, medicine, agents of social control, surveillance. Of all of these tools of society serve to perpetuate this notion that, like, if you're a pervert or you're into kinks or anything like that, or you like what anything that would be defined as unusual sexual behavior, like I said, it could mean anal sex. Even if you're a heterosexual person, then that means that you are psychiatrically speaking, scientifically speaking, legally speaking, are a pervert, and you will give your future generations diseases. It will damage your genes. It'll make your future children sterile and give your children rickets, and then your children would endangered children of perverts would be surveilled by the government. This is fucking fascism here. The government would surveil endangered children of perverts, so that because they were worried about how much they would become perverts and destroy society and destroy everyone's genes too, right? So they all functioned for a long time on the basis of degenerescence and the hereditary perversion system. I'm gonna drink here. So yeah, all of these methods of social control in society and all of these institutions, like society and the government and methods of social control, they were used to perpetuate this idea of perversion being like scientifically and genetically dangerous for you and the entire culture through degenerescence and the hereditary perversion system. You could even go back to combining that to perversion, heredity, degenerescence, like Foucault said earlier. But so degenerescence, like I said, the process of becoming degenerate, and then the heredity perversion system, like I was describing, basically meaning that if you're a pervert, it means that your parents were perverts, and it means that your children and all future generations will be perverts. They'll somehow also be sterile while producing future generations. That's an interesting contradiction that doesn't make sense. The children will get rickets, and you'll have hemiplegia and cystic symptoms. You'll be the left side of your body will get paralyzed for many future generations too, or there's a high likelihood of that at least. And your children and future generations will get senile dementia, and they'll get asthma and tuberculosis from you being a pervert. So that's fucking fascism, the surveillance in particular, right? For a long time, there's a function on the long time on the basis of degenerescence in the hereditary perversion system, an entire social practice which took the exasperated but coherent form of a state-directed racism. So that's interesting, because he's talking about racism, but I think he means like bigotry or discrimination of some kind, because like it's basically racism against people who are defined as perverts, and it was used by fascist methods in the government to, arrest, lock up, and sterilize gay people, straight people who were having anal sex, probably straight people who were having oral sex, which is way more normal nowadays. It was used as a way to declare people as mentally ill and lock them up forever, remove them from society, sterilize them, sometimes execute them. It's awful shit. State-directed racism, state-directed fascism too, I think. So the coherent form of state-directed racism furnished this technology of sex with a formidable power and far-reaching consequences. All right, so again, that's just one paragraph in Michel Foucault's History of Sexuality, and that's where I'll stop for today. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that as usual. I always think that Foucault's work is fascinating, and yeah, check out my playlist with all of my previous videos on Foucault's History of Sexuality. Check out my other similar philosophical videos. I'm going to put out a clip probably tomorrow or the next day with from my most recent video on the Lacanian / Hegelian / Marxist philosopher Slavoj Žižek's book called Less Than Nothing, and it's his critique of the Nazi Adolf Eichmann and how that demonstrates flaws in Kant's categorical imperative. So check that out as well, and check out my next podcast that I'll do with my friend Dusty about George Orwell's famous book Animal Farm, which is about how a communist revolution leads to Stalinism and civil war, basically. And yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Share this everywhere. Share your mindgasms all over the world. And and check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description of the video as always. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and grooves in the heart. And Foucault is awesome. Dumbasses like Jordan Peterson in particular, and James Lindsay, and many of other so-called public intellectuals demonize the fuck out of him and his work because they strawman the shit out of all of his writing. So read their actual books. They actually have some really fascinating points, and you can learn a lot about history and all of the various complex factors that go into the way the culture is shaped throughout history, and basically the dominant philosophies and cultures at various times in history. Anyway, thanks again for watching, everyone, and adios until next time.